the style, since it's not a therapy session or anything like that, is kind of open forum discussion or more person to person. Um, Someone will message me privately or on chat, whatever they're kind of going through, they have questions about, or like, you know, maybe you had an experience in a past relationship. Yeah, why did that person do this thing, or was I in the wrong with it? Whatever the conversation you want it to be, um, and then you, as the question asker, can decide if you're open for chat to have input and discourse with, as well as my input, or if you're just looking for more of a personal input from my experience or my knowledge in psychology and studies. So that's the main purpose. It's going to be refined. This is the first time doing it, so it's going to appear new to me as well as the experience. But it's just going to get better with time and age, especially just as I get more adept in it and more knowledge and better equip myself with the tools to better help. So my current background is I have an undergrad in psychology. I will be going to get a master's in marriage family therapy, MFT. Most likely at Pepperdine. It'll be completed in about 2 to 3 years, and at that point I can officially clinically practice. After that, I don't know if I would continue to get my PsyD PhD or not. It just depends on how far I want to take it, but with the master's you pretty much do most of the things that you can PsyD or PhD. So I'll just have to take it by that point. But yeah, that's why we're here. That's why I'm here. So high hopes, low expectations for day one. It's going to be Thursdays. Right now, the time I have set is 1 p.m. Pacific time to 3 p.m. That can change due to what's most convenient for everybody else at the moment. Yeah, that's what it's going to be. Thursdays, Therapeutic Thursday, and we'll take it from there. So, doggy, trying to get a toy, so it made a knocking noise. But yeah, so I know I need to allow some time to let people trickle in, but if anybody is here that has any questions, has any conversational topics, mental health topics, we can go ahead and get started with that. And the reason I don't have it just on me only is just in case we want to pull up some videos or studies, anything like that. We can do that and have the screen in order to do it. Like I know a good topic for most people would just simply be like attachment styles and relationships. You know, we could go deeper into more of like the neurochemical interactions as to some correlationally anyways, like the leading causes or deficiencies for depression, anxiety, ADHD. I'm not too fully astute on, but I did work with neurodivergent children for about a year, a little over a year, so I do have some background in child development, neurodivergency. So those topics are also open for discussion. Again, I'm in no ways an expert, but I am a student and constantly learning. trying to get better at what I can. So let's just for now we can just watch. I mean, think like so. I know attachment styles and gaslighting would probably, I would assume, be two major topics of discussion. So I guess I'll just have a little coffee, just relax a little bit. Like I said, if anybody has any questions, just ask away. You can private message me on Twitch. If you're someone who I know from Facebook, you can private message there, or you can just type in chat. Really, it's up to you and your preference. But while we're chilling, we can Mel Robin. Let's start with just listening to someone smarter than me talk about attachment styles until someone has a question, just so there's some background going on. Where did let's see if I can try to put this in this frame here in the best way possible.
They said wizardry only appears in fairy tale.
Alright, so this is just an introduction to attachment styles while we're just chilling.
Everybody has their own style of bonding emotionally with the people in their lives. This is called attachment style, and it plays a central role in the healthiness of our relationships. Neuropsychologist Dr. Judy Ho is an expert in attachment theory, and in this series, she explains the types of attachment styles, where each one comes from, and how to recognize your own. Most importantly, she shares how to improve it in order to improve your relationships and enhance your mental wellness. Dr. Judy, I'm so glad that you get to talk to our audience about this topic, because it's the most requested topic I think we've had in the last year, probably.
So cool.
So let's talk about attachment theory. Where does it come from?
I am so excited about attachment theory because it does affect so many elements of your life, even as adults. But attachment theory is all about the fact that
Theoretically,
as
how you were
infants and
raised.
as very young children, we are helpless. So we need our caregivers to take care of us. So attachment theory is all about how we establish that relationship with our primary caregivers, and whether or not that establishment is healthy or not, and how that influences how you function as a child, both mentally and physically, and again, pervades into your adulthood and career, in love, in friendships, and every other aspect of your life.
Do we know that it is affecting us, or is it affecting us subconsciously?
I think sometimes you don't realize it.
Okay.
And I think unless you hear the word attachment, or you've understood the term attachment, or had been spoken about it to somebody in some way, you're not going to really know that that's attachment. But it will explain so many of your decisions in life. It explains why you're attracted to the people that you are. It sometimes even explains the type of work you do. And it explains the kind of friends you like to keep. So it really does affect so many areas of your life, which is why I think your viewers have requested it so much.
I hope you're finding value in this session, and if you are, I invite you to visit medcircle.com. Her book, she mentioned that part of the reason she wanted to get into weather and become a scientist and be on television was to get this approval from her parents, because they always grew up watching the Weather Channel or watching the weather on TV. And she goes, well, if I'm on TV, then they will sit and watch me and I can add benefit to their life. And she goes, so here I am. I learned in therapy. I built an entire huge career based on this deep want to get my parents' approval.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. It totally makes sense. And she has really good insight about that. And I was going to say, too, that people who've been to therapy generally know the term attachment because probably at some point your therapist has mentioned it to you.
Yeah, I mean, regardless of your therapy, there's going to be a lot of this tropes therapists will go through, unless you're going to like specific, let's say, spiritual therapy. I'm trying to break down your attachment style. Not really break down. Understand your attachment style and understand not just that, but like any potential traumas that are associated with that. Like free association is a very powerful tool for psychologists, which is literally just the like the. It's not literally just, it's the stereotype of sit on the couch and how are you feeling, and then the therapist, psychologist, psychiatrist will just sit there and let you, the individual, freely uh, associate what's going on in your mind. Um, most times it's probably just because it's a safe space and thinking things internally alone and not verbally expressing them or writing them down, like some form of um, expression outside of just internally, some external expression. Um, doesn't You don't always like feel or go through what you need to in order to be okay or be better equipped to getting over something that was traumatic or whatever the case may be. Like, I can personally internalize, like, oh yeah, I'm doing this, or the reason I'm not here yet is because I have like this past stuff, these experiences, this trauma, whatever the case may be. Um, I can think it in my mind, and I guess illogically think or irrationally think that because I know it exists and I thought about it the philosopher way, I asked the question but I didn't find the answer. Um, there's like some level of acceptance, like, oh yeah, I'm over it because I know it. But when you actually verbalize it, when you go through the train of thought from this one to this one to this one to this one, your emotions build. That's when you can actually, or not the only time, but generally that's when you can. What's up, Nub? Throw me off course. That's when you can really, um, like feeling those emotions is really starts to not necessarily, but be okay with them or try to heal from them or try to um, prove through them. So it is important, whether it's a friend group or professional or something like here, that you can discuss and talk about the things that have gone on in your life, are going on in your life, or that you like futuristic fears that you have. I'm partially lied. You have to go for about 2 hours. Well, 2 hours is the designated time slot for this. Um, who knows? Could be the only person that came, other than Wyatt talked. Um, I said I'm doing this completely on my, like, completely knowing that. What's up, Mook? All right, maybe also Mook. But I'm doing this, completely knowing that in theory forever, or at least the first few times of me doing this, it's going to be a complete flop. I'm terrible with advertising thing. I'm not on TikTok. I don't post YouTube videos. I don't post Instagram. Um, and for years, I didn't post on Facebook, but I did actually advertise this to, IRL people. So yeah, I've zero expectation for this, but I of course have like high hopes. I hope that I can get people in here. We can have healthy conversations on mental health, on relationships, on uh, just about anything pertaining to the field of like psychology, um, like neurochemicals, things like that. I because I know Nub wants to talk politics. Well, he says he does. I don't know if he actually does. He could just be instigating, which like him. I do think if there is any level of success or following with this, that on a different day, hey, Vertibi, attachment styles. Yeah, I was having some filler, like I know a decent amount on attachment styles, but just listening to people smarter than me talk about it and then breaking it down until I get some topics of discussion from you guys, experiences or questions that you've had that I can answer. And if I can't answer, the reason I have this little block open is so we can open up Google Scholar and get some peer-reviewed articles on it, browse through the results. You can watch a quick little YouTube video on it, just to make sure that any information I am giving, if it's information and not opinion, I want to make sure any information I give is accurate. And opinion's just that; it's my opinion. You're avoidant. I didn't take a test, but I would say I'm a mixture of fearful, avoidant, and secure, which to some degree you should have a healthy level of all of them. Obviously, amongst debate, but the best trait to have is secure. But I think now I've developed into almost just secure. But definitely I had it was maybe not fearful. I had anxious. I wasn't avoidant. I was the person that poured everything into it. So I misspoke. I was anxious. Anxious and secure, which is an interesting combination. I think the one that correlates the most with secure would be distant avoidant, because if you're secure in yourself, in theory, that means you'd be okay being alone, and you could tell yourself like, well, I don't need them, and that would give you more of an excuse to avoid fixing a relationship, because you just tell yourself, well, I don't need them, I can do this on my own. And it's a defense mechanism to certain extents. I mean, they all in regards are, but yeah, having the avoidant, independent, essentially attachment style, it just makes it difficult to have a reciprocal relationship unless you are just simpatico with your partner. The other day, you learned the other day, a good way to address the avoidance of emotions is realizing that when people trigger that ick to run away is exactly what you were taught not to express during childhood. Yeah. And unfortunately, or not unfortunately, I don't want to put any connotation. Yeah, for now. Um, one kind of correlational personality trait with avoidant is narcissism. And if you can understand that you are avoidant and also potentially, lean towards narcissistic personality traits, because it's easy to have both of them. The narcissist typically, like, there's two main types of narcissism. There's one that's rare, actually very rare, but that is so secure in themselves that they actually have no care about anybody else, in the sense of like their opinions, their approval, their whatever. They have actual other people externally have no effect internally on. That's actually a very rare level of narcissism. Most people have a protective narcissism. It's because they actually are pretty fragile on the inside, mentally, and they resort to the avoidant attachment style, or they resort to gaslighting, deflecting, protect themselves. And most people, inherently want to protect themselves, but the difference with the narcissist is they don't have empathy for the person that they're doing it to, or that they're protecting themselves from. They don't think what I'm about to say could hurt this individual. Their thought process is more on the lines of, I don't want to be hurt right now, so I need to defer this or deflect this hurt that I'm about to start feeling and put it on something else or change the subject. So gaslighting is a fascinating, topic of conversation as well. Yeah. I personally, I would say I was earlier in my life, I was relationship wise, I was probably more anxious. Than secure, but in daily life, I was secure. And there's layers to that of like upbringing and things that I experienced. When we're young, we mirror our experience, or our, not necessarily our experience, we mirror our observations, which become our experience, because we don't have experience. So there was some like mirroring aspects of not just like my family, but things I had witnessed in other people's relationships, whether they be friend or a friend's family. I was typically pretty observant of like people's emotional state and how they interacted with each other. Like I noticed nuances of like there was a subtle spite in that conversation, and not. I don't want to go too much into myself, but basically my experiences, which is the case in all cases, most cases, led me to be that anxious. I would be in a relationship, and if something went wrong or was going wrong, I immediately blame myself. I immediately, gosh, what did I do? What am I doing wrong? Why is this happening? Did I do something incorrect here? Blah 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 blah, and just putting the blame on myself. And then I know in my experiences, I've been and done, I've had and done emotional abuse. Not intentional. I mean, it's out of insecurity, which doesn't make it right. But I've had relationships where I didn't feel like I was getting love in the way that I wanted, or thought that's how love should be given. So I questioned the love of that person, um, which led to arguments, led to just not productive things. That when I was younger, I'm like 18, 19, even and before, like it wasn't, not fair, it's not right, and it's a lack of understanding of my own emotionality at the time, and my own triggers. um, so the good thing about attachment styles, about personality traits, harder, I would argue, personality traits than attachment styles, but like, you're born with your personality. It's through gene expression, through the environment, that those personality traits strengthen or weaken. So while you have your innate personality traits, if you are, let's say, the most negative connotation on one is narcissist. You are a narcissist, and I don't know, you could say it's a paradox, maybe wrong term, but if you're narcissistic, then you have no desire to change for the better because you don't feel the need to. But so the argument could be, if you feel the need to change, then you're not narcissistic. It's a fallacy, and it's a proper thing. If you are narcissistic and do things to be more cognizant, and lessen your narcissistic tendencies, it's just about acknowledging them when they happen, or at least after the fact, so you can learn from it. So personality traits are, according to most psychology studies, personality traits are, you're born with them. Like, that's just encoded in your DNA. But it's what you observe and experience that expresses those personality traits. So you're not stuck, but it does require work. But therapy, or at least some form of self-reflection, is very important, towards growth and becoming the person that you would like to be. Yeah, I just went on a major tangent, a little rant on that. If anybody has anything they would like to add, or any other question, or any other topic, or if they want to go further into that topic, we can very easily do that. Like I said, I'm not even close to an expert. I don't even know what that would look like. Like, you can be an expert in a particular style of psychology or therapy, but psychology and mental health is not a one-size-fits-all. So while someone might be an expert in that specific category or that style, it's not a tit for tat. They're going to be great in all things. You're calming. I appreciate that. Yeah, I'm not an expert. I have a decent amount of knowledge, I guess more than the average bear, in a broad category of psychology. I mean, that's just what getting the degree does for you, if you actually absorb the knowledge and take it in. And there's nuances throughout the learning process that I probably overlook. Not even probably. I definitely overlook some things. I didn't fully absorb like 100% accuracy on all of the things. Ideally, I keep learning, keep growing. Like yesterday, in preparation for this, I don't think I didn't think we would get this like deep into the conversation. I guess while I'm talking, we can not have this just chill there. But I was listening to a whole lot of neurotransmitter and hormone interactions, and I was like relearning it because I'd learned to a degree a lot of it, but like going back over the information, it was like, oh yeah, I forgot about that, or you know, sometimes I'll get things mixed up, or I'll forget that there's a terminology, like a neurochemical terminology for something that is more, there's more of a layman's, like everybody knows term of, like, you know, epinephrine, adrenaline, or like it's maybe not, I mean, it could be tit for tat, like exact, like that is adrenaline, but like epinephrine, norepinephrine are on your adrenals, and like when I thought about it, like EpiPen, epinephrine, duh, what does it do? Shot of adrenaline. But yeah, so in preparation, I was like, trying to relearn or solidify the information of like neurochemicals and how they interact with the body, and your mental state, and what they regulate, how they interact with each other, of like, you know, higher serotonin is lower cortisol, lower epinephrine, higher GABA, which are like your mood regulators, and your emotional like regulation as well. You know, if you have low cortisol and like high epinephrine, high thyroid, you can be prone to more emotional bursts. You have less regulation, less handle on your emotions, and you can like it's the hard part diagnosing, thanks to DSM, but like, and well, not necessarily thanks to DSM, thanks to insurances, have to have like a diagnosis to like really help somebody, so insurance will pay for it, but the hard part is like, you know, you could just have, which, I mean, you could say most of the diseases and disorders are chemical imbalances, of course, but like you can have these low neurochemicals, like low GABA, low serotonin, which lowers your oxytocin, which there's a weird, it's an increase but also an inverse relationship with like high stress and cortisol and dopamine, because dopamine, we typically think of it as just your reward and motivation, but it's also your like energy and alertness. So when you have high stress, you know, dopamine itself is known as that, but depending on where the receptors are active in the body is depending on how it interacts with you. So the increase in dopamine isn't like, oh man, I want to do this again, this is rewarding. It's the alertness, it's the energy, because of your higher cortisol, norepinephrine, epinephrine, that kind of stuff. Never looked at those levels. I were able to do this at a doc's office. You overproduce cortisol. Unfortunately, hormones, I don't know to the precision, but hormones, you can get a rough estimate of, you know, get your estrogen levels, your progesterone, your testosterone, your thyroid. Those are the hormones that you can get, amongst others, actually tested, and cortisol. But when it comes to serotonin, dopamine, GABA, epinephrine, norepinephrine, and endocannabinoid, something like that, and one other, those we don't have accurate tools or measurements to gauge yet. So it's more of like when people have Alzheimer's, if I'm getting it correct, whether it's Alzheimer's or Parkinson's, it might be Parkinson's. When you start developing the symptoms, there's no real test to say like, oh, this is what they have. Doctors just kind of go by your symptoms and then throw things at the wall and see which one sticks. They're like, all right, well, if you have Parkinson's, these medications should work. So we're going to first diagnose you as if you have that. And then if that doesn't work, like, oh, okay, maybe it's essential tremors. So now we're going to give you this medication that affects tremors. Okay, maybe it's not that. All right, maybe you're overproducing or underproducing like dopamine or serotonin. So now we're going to, I don't know, yeah. I'm just throwing this out. This probably is not the actual medical psychiatry or not neurological thing that they do, but like, all right, we'll put you on SRIs, like reuptake inhibitors. Like, we'll do these things to kind of figure out what is going on, because they can't diagnose it through those measures, like through observation. So it's just important to know where those neurochemicals are hosted, where they're formed, and where they go physiologically, so you can try to narrow things down on your own. It sucks because it's like such a typical statement, but in some ways like it's typical because there's truth to it. But I know someone with depression or anxiety doesn't want to hear it. But serotonin, which is your major mood regulator, that helps control your dopamine and GABA, which again are mood regulations. I mean, dopamine, say it's a mood regulator, but it's your reward. But it lowers your cortisol, lowers your epinephrine, norepinephrine, and increases your oxytocin, the love chemical. That is produced 90% and housed 90% in your gut. So when you have bad gut health, you are highly potentially throwing off your serotonin levels, which is throwing off your moods, which can make it look like symptom-wise have borderline personality disorder, bipolar. Now, bipolar, they can kind of have more accurate. Having bad gut health can lead, maybe not lead, it's more of like if you have a susceptibility for diabetes, having sugar, increasing your likelihood of getting diabetes. Having low serotonin levels doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be depressed, but it doesn't give you as much of a defensive barrier to traumas or experiences that can lead to depression. So you, again, as stupid as it sounds, or like not as stupid because it isn't stupid, as just, oh yeah, that's the answer, as it sounds, physical health really and gut health really play a big factor in your mood regulation and your perception of things. Perception also plays a big factor of things like your mental, what you're thinking about in your mind, how you perceive people's actions. If you have higher resistance, higher serotonin, higher endorphins, higher dopamine, lower cortisol, all that kind of stuff, higher GABA, if someone slights you, does something that you view as they've wronged you, you're more likely to look at that thing and either brush it off or think they have something going on, I'm just not going to entertain it. But when you don't have those resistances, and there's a lot that plays into it, overall, like your personality, everything else. But when you don't have those resistances, you essentially have a higher likelihood of viewing it as more of a negative interaction and responding negatively to it, which just opens floodgates. And then you'll go home and be like, wow, what was that a-hole thinking? Like, did I look stupid, or did this or this, whatever mundane stupid thing that person said. It's going to trigger you more, and it can spiral you and ruminate, and you don't have that neurochemical helping you because of gut health, because of physical health. So it is like I know from external experience, not personal experience, but like from friends who've gone to therapy for like depression, stuff like that, when they hear anything related to like diet or exercise, they just kind of like shut down. They're like, oh, okay, like, yeah, like the world sucks because I eat a cheeseburger. It's like, well, you're associating improperly there. But when you're already in that negative spiral, just telling somebody that, trying to take my cheeseburger, blasphemy. But it all intertwines. Your body will do its best to make do with what it's got, but a lot of these neurochemicals are created through like your vitamins and minerals. One of the ones I kept forgetting, glutamate, on that neurochemical side. But
Remitly sabe que no eres solo una transacción. Envías dinero a la cuenta bancaria de mi madre en México.
A Nicaragua seguido, gracias a los cargos bajos de Remitly.
A El Salvador y Honduras fácil con
all right, let's wait for this ad to go away so I keep my tranquil music in the mood. It's honestly hard though, not gonna lie, when I get a rush from some delicious deep fried food. And so like I've studied, a lot of nutrition and physiological, like kinesiology type stuff. I mean, I was going to be a personal trainer as well, so having a base understanding of those interactions and the mindset of them, like trying to stick to a strict diet almost never works unless you have some like some intense goal, like I want to be a bodybuilder or whatever. Then you're sticking to a strict diet, but typically I don't want to misspeak, so I'm not going to, but for the everyday person, if you're trying to lose weight, trying to be healthier, doing it in an intense way usually leads to a really bad rubber band effect. As well as you put so much of your personal success onto your strictness of the diet, that you're human, you're gonna have urges every now and then. Your unhealthy gut bacteria, or your what people are saying, everybody or a lot of people have parasites or worms in the brain. Your worms and parasites in the brain are gonna say, like, we need sugar. You have been depriving me from sugar. I'm dying. That's gonna make you like crave this thing ravenously. Like, it's an addiction. And so when you fall off that diet, most people who just follow a strict diet without any leeway will feel like not just crap physically, they're gonna feel like crap mentally. Because I'm like, I've put 5 weeks into this, 6 weeks, I've put a month or 3 months, 4 months into this, and then I threw it all away because I ate the chocolate cake, and they're like, well, I already had the chocolate cake, or I already had the cheeseburger, now let me get the chocolate cake. And they just, it makes it hard to follow. Like, I would need to do a little more research, nutritionally, or like, studies into this. But to my understanding of healthy eating and nutrition and mentality or mental state and things like that, it's very misleading, the initial results of someone following a diet plan. Not because the results are fake necessarily. They're real. They're tangible to an extent. You can feel them. You can see on the scale. Like, I followed this diet for 2 weeks and I feel better. I've lost like 5 pounds. This diet works. And you have to find the common denominator, right? It's not necessary. Like, yes, the diet's working, but it's not solely the diet that's doing the work. It's most people who make a drastic life change. It's drastic because they eat like crap, or they don't work out, or whatever the case may be. Whatever negative health factor that's going on in their life, they're doing that, and then they completely 180. So it's not the fact that they're on this diet necessarily. It's the fact that they just cut out the bad stuff and they introduced more good stuff. That's it. You would get similar results. Well, I would hypothesize. I need to see more research into it. I mean, I've seen other nutritional people talk about it, so I'm going off of their information. It could be biased or whatever, but just logically, going off of that, if I just altered my unhealthy diet and added some more greens or more vitamins, whatever source, typically not supplements, because your body doesn't actually take a lot of that in, but if it needs to be a supplement. Just adding a little bit of the greens, taking away, if I have dessert every night, now I'm gonna every other night for now, so I can slowly get to where, you know what, I'll get it just whenever I feel like. It could be like 2 days, could be 3 days, who knows. So just cutting out from every day to every other day, that's 50% of your dessert intake. And now I'm adding greens just from that alone, without going to some severe, just cutting it out entirely. You're gonna feel better. You're gonna lose weight. You're gonna have more motivations to do things. Your gut microbiome is going to be healthier, which is going to in turn produce serotonin, which will help regulate your moods, which, it's just a chain of events. So I personally, and even when I become a therapist, unless there's some research that hasn't been done yet, or strong meta-analysis on the research that says what I'm about to say is wrong, I would, in my professional career in the future, I would never cold turkey someone off of almost anything, even if it's something as simple as coffee or sugar, because those are addictive things. And going cold turkey for the vast majority of the bell curve isn't going to work anyways. There has to be some baby steps of discipline, of whatever, because motivation and willpower are finite resources. And when you have a plan to do something, it's your willpower and motivation that will get you started. But if you don't have a good baseline to fall back on, or you don't start developing positive habits, a habit could take anywhere from 21 to 90 days. Research, I think it's 21. I'm sure. Um, Forming a habit on a consistent basis takes anywhere from 21 to 90 days on average. You're going to run out of the motivation and willpower. Like you have to have the determination and the discipline, or not even determination, because again, determination could off too. You have to have the discipline and the form those habits. So you need to make sure they're habits that are easily formed first, before you jump into some crazy, oh, I haven't worked out in a year, let me start going to the gym 5 days a week, an hour a day. Doesn't sound like that much, but most of the time after 2 weeks, I think statistically after 2 weeks, most people who start going to the gym, I mean, this is even when you think of New Year's Eve resolution people, like if you're an actual regular gym goer, the first like 2-3 weeks, sometimes month of January, the gym is like packed. You have all your New Year's Eve resolutioners. But after 2 weeks to 4 weeks, most of them, they're gone. They're done. Because they get sore, they jumped into it too strong, and they're tired, which you're going to be tired regardless, but there's easier ways to get into it. So you're not formulating productive habits, you're just trying to, force yourself into it, and it doesn't translate to long-term discipline. My brain just started racing to other things, but kind of irrelevant. Tangent number 2. How your body creates the, not in its entirety, but neurochemicals, how they interact, and physiological importance of things, like diet, exercise, and I don't think there needs to be this, something that I've seen in other people and even myself, in certain extents, is like a lot of people have this ideology of what going to the gym is and like what a healthy body is, and they compare. So they're like, oh man, I don't want to look like that, so then they don't do it. Which most of the time when you see someone who's like actually really, really fit, that's years of work. Even if you're taking steroids, like even if you have some HGH, some assisting tool, getting to that level of fitness that most people see on Instagram or whatever and try to compare themselves to that is demoralizing. It's not motivating at all. It might be motivating initially, but it's like they'll do it for 4 months, maybe, if lucky. They're like, man, I look nothing like that guy. And I do the same workouts. It's like, well, most of the time they're not actually doing the workouts that they advertise that they're doing. Or if they do, it's part of a regimen. And second of all, they got to that through discipline and years of work. Like, I always find it amusing when, I guess, biological female, like, gray area of labeling, but someone who has higher levels of estrogen, typically, when one of their main excuses for not lifting weights is, I don't want to become one of those bulky so-and-sos. Like, all right, well, you're not, because they've worked years for that. You're not just gonna pick up a dumbbell, do a curl, and all of a sudden like, oh Jesus, what just happened? Oh, my voice got deeper. Like it doesn't happen like that. It happens over a lot of working and determination and discipline, and using that as an excuse to not work out isn't logically or rationally justifiable. Um, but yeah, I mean, there's so much research now that talks about resistance training, whether with weights or bands, um, lowers mortality. Like, last thing I read was like 50%, could be more, but it lowers your all-cause mortality by like 50%, especially the older you get. It keeps your bone density higher, your cognitive processing is higher than the average person of that age who doesn't. So resistance training to some capacity, even if you physically through other means can't, you can find something to engage your body physically. It's better than nothing at all. And it's super important to wellness, and again, all-cause mortality. If you want to, live a longer, healthier life. But now we're getting into like not psychological. Well, it all correlates, or it's all related. But we're getting off the mental health psychology type topic. So gonna maybe end that tangent, unless again somebody else wants to talk about something specific, hear something that's on their mind, anything like that. But I think is the most, I guess, nerve-wracking thing for me was doing this in general. It's not that like talking to people, like I love talking to people, I love discourse, I love learning new things and educating or helping other people grow. Like, that is my passion. That's always been my passion. Any field of work that I envisioned myself doing, the common denominator was helping people, developing people. My career paths, I mean, acting was always and will always be number one. It's on the back burner currently, because I'm focusing on other things to raise my baseline, baseline of living. But acting, that's my own personal growth of like depression, things like that. But acting and performances also help other people, help people feel relatable, like they're not alone. Like, oh, well, that character, maybe it was based on a real person. That person went through something similar to me, and they came out all right. So I think that's very powerful. But outside of acting, it was personal training. It was being like a high school or college theater teacher or football coach. Psychology, which is what I'm doing now. Something else like life coach. That all kind of like goes in the same spectrum. But those were the only things in my mind that I was like, what would fulfill me as a person? And again, the common denominator of all those things is helping people grow, find their potential, or help them feel okay, better about situations going on in their lives. So my brain did disconnect as to why I even brought that up. But yeah, I mean, that's my goal and my passion is just to help in any way that I can. Like, when I become more financially like in a higher class of finance, like when I'm fully set to an extent for life, I can't wait to pass that down. Can't wait to like help others get brought up or whatever the case may be. So, you know, I know unfortunately finances play a huge factor in people's potential for things. But unfortunately, you know, that's just the way the world works. There's not much I can do to change the, you know, societal or global scale of that. But yeah, I don't know. That was again a little rant on me and why I do it. But so I was more nervous about doing this, because I advertised it to Facebook. Like if it was just, which, you know, as it appears, it was to an extent irrelevant because I haven't gotten any questions, topics of discussion that from anyone outside of who already follows me, already knows me, via Twitch. But that was the most nerve-wracking part because that like included real life. You can kind of compartmentalize and externalize, like, all right, well, you know, whatever happens here, if people are like, oh, you're a failure here, it's like, whatever. Like, I don't personally know most of you. Some I've developed relationships with, like, as much as you can via internet and stuff like that, but like, you know, my day-to-day, who I grew up with, like, but opening that door opened myself up to like personal criticism from people I've met and went to school with and grew up with. So finally taking this, I guess, leap, I'm gonna repeat it over and over. I have like low or zero expectations. You know, I'm glad those of you who are here are here. I appreciate it. But obviously I had high and have high hopes, at least for what it can become. I think it's brave to this. I also think it's harder with the topic because naturally people are closed off, but I think you should keep going and do it more. Yeah, I mean, the goal is to just keep going, even if it's the same people every time. I'm gonna upload these videos specifically to YouTube. Probably just raw, uncut. Just upload it. Also, for the main one is so it can reach people on their time and they can watch this back and, oh yeah, let's talk about this point or that point. What was this conversation like? So it can reach that audience time frame, but also as like a progressive thing, you know, like I can look back on this on day one, be like, oh man, that's where I was day one. You know, and now I'm on day 21, and here we are. I can compare, like, this has gotten better, you know, or I lost sight somewhere of this. Good idea. Maybe even extend the Discord to people who may have questions later. Yeah, my Discord is open, so I yeah, like all I gotta do is type !Discord, and on my Facebook, you know, I opened it up to, like, you know, you can message me privately on Twitch, or you can message me on. Thank you very much, Christian Verna. I really appreciate that. Yeah, so it's just, you know, open in whatever ways I can. Like, you know, eventually I should, I guess, pay for the Streamlabs multi-streaming thing, since Twitch did away with its you can't stream on multiple platforms at the same time. So I can be streaming on at least Twitch and YouTube. You know, Kick. I feel like Kick, there's no growth unless you're already somebody who brought a following. But I could be wrong. I haven't really been looking into Kick at all. But at least YouTube and Twitch, and then, like I said, posting it, having my Discord link in there. If anything, I might just create a separate Discord for the like mental health, psychology, conversational topic thing, because obviously my current Discord, it was intended for like gaming and stuff like that, so it's called Schneider's Workplace, and the categories are like Path of Exile, League of Legends, blah blah blah. So I would probably create a separate Discord for that. But yeah, I'm just gonna keep going with it. There's a statistic that said for like podcasters, like whenever I've looked up prior and whatever, like what makes a successful podcaster, how, those metrics, and the common theme in terms of consistency, outside of actual consistency, was most, I think it was all the way up to 21. Could be off base by a lot. I think it was probably even a lower number, but they're like 80 or 90% of podcasts or stuff like this, YouTube video uploads, don't make it past, I think, 21. And of those that make it past that like 21 threshold, the success rate, which of course in theory, if 90% of your competition goes away, your success rate beyond that point skyrockets. So it's just consistency and that word, determination. Like I've been talking about doing this, and I've been hesitant in doing this for a long time, and I finally decided yesterday I'm doing it. Like, here we are. I'm gonna do this thing. I'm gonna stay on top of my psychological research, and even through my master's, I'm gonna continue this. The two factors that would make me discontinue is, one, just actual motivation, right? Like, I have to set myself up for success mentally, kind of like the diet thing of, it would be easy for me to judge myself and my capabilities or worthiness of doing this by looking at my viewer count, and let's just say 3 months from now, so what, 12 session days into this, it's still at the same level. Mentally, that could be defeating. Like, well, why am I even doing this? So I have to make sure that I'm prioritizing why I'm doing this, not for any judgmental metric, but for the intent, right? Like, my intent is just to help people. If it's one person, it's one person. If it's you guys, Food, Burnaby, Nub, whoever, then that's who it is. Like, so as long as I don't lose sight of that, that would be the one thing that would stop me from doing this. The other thing is, if when I get into my master's program, the board, psychology, the student board, whatever, is like, I know you have the disclaimer and stuff like that of like, you're not a professional yet. but you need to stop. Because then, of course, like I would have to, because the overall goal is for me to get professionally licensed, so I can, I guess, more reliably, more accreditedly help people, and I can have like an official practice, things like that. So outside of those two variables, me losing sight of why I'm doing this and allowing external factors to essentially defeat me, which I'm a human. I'm I'm susceptible to being defeated, right? Everybody is. And hopefully what a defeat looks like to me is I don't do it for 1 week, and then I feel like poo-poo because I didn't do it. And I'm like, because if I feel like crap for not doing it, that means I know I'm doing it. Well, no, but I know I'm doing it for the right reason. Because if I feel like crap for not doing it, the reasons that could be is because I'm like, damn, what if someone needed that episode? Like why did I hinge the help of someone else on the measurement of success via like viewership or whatever criticisms, who knows? Yeah, the goal is for this to just kind of be an open space, a free space. I said in the beginning of this video, as like an introduction for the YouTube video, but I'm going to reiterate it, especially since topics of discussion are scarce at the moment. This is intended for a free space, judgment free but respectable, and nothing outlandish. If I think the question is leading, like it's a trap question trying to theoretically get me in trouble, whatever body that I'd be in trouble with, I reserve the right to decline answering the question. But it's meant for a healthy place to go for mental health development, growth. Again, whether it's an actual experience someone had or just a theoretical, like, well, I haven't experienced this, but a fear of mine is if I'm in a relationship and this is happening, like, what's going on? Things like that is what I'm here for. I'm going to give not necessarily advice, because I'm fundamentally against telling people what to do. Because from my experience of early childhood, telling people what they should do, not in like an authoritarian or like, you better do this, but as an example, if when I was in school, grade school, I was typically the person people came to. If you were in my friend group, people came to for like relationship advice, for traumatic advice, childhood traumatic advice, so peer-to-peer. So I tried to, be as unbiased and helpful as possible. But in my earlier life, there would be times like, well, the dude or the girl, whatever, they're definitely cheating on you, or they're abusive. Like, get out of that relationship. And that's telling someone what to do. That never works. And I appreciate that, Berta B. I'm excited for your journey, and I will enjoy supporting you every moment as much as possible. Much love. I couldn't say another thing. But through my experience of early childhood, and trying to help people then, even in grade school, I learned quick that telling people exactly what's going on, like, oh, well, this is what they're like, these are the signs they're giving you, so this is what they're doing, you know, most of the time I was accurate, but that doesn't help that person. Especially if they come to the conclusion, they come to me like, oh man, he actually was doing that thing you said he was doing. It wasn't beneficial for me to be like, I told you so, you should have listened to me. Like, that doesn't help anybody. So I try not to necessarily give advice to the extent of like what you should do. I just try to give perspective of potentials. Like, well, if this person's exhibiting these behaviors, there's a chance they're doing this, there's a chance they're doing this. You have to ask yourself how you feel about those outcomes, and come to whatever you feel is absolutely best for you, and not for, without like true context. It's hard for me to really formulate this, but like, you know, without like a preconception of like, well, this is what I'm worth, like I deserve to be in this situation. Like having that, it's like you have to get rid of that, and just, if you also have to ask where that's coming from. Like, is your self-worth, which a lot of people's self-worth is, externally driven? Like, do you only find your worth in how other people value you, and if your closest relationships you feel devalued? Then, while there's obviously a relationship issue, because theoretically your friends and partners should be uplifting, increase in value, add value to your life as you should add value to their lives. But just outside of that, like outside of the fact that those are unhealthy relationships, you have to understand or come to terms with, probably bad terminology, but your value is not determined by other people. Tangible things, the value of money is determined by what someone's willing to pay for it. NFTs, to the average person, they're not valuable at all. It's like a digital art. Who get, like, that's not like, no, I don't care. But if someone's willing to pay $1 billion for it, it's valuable. But that also just shows that, if your self-worth is determined extrinsically, that you just need to find the people that find the value in. Because there are people that know the value of you, or maybe not know, but are willing to find out, or they have a positive outlook on the value that you bring. So it requires self-worth, or it's not self-worth, self-reflection and understanding. There's a lot more nuance and a lot more to discuss on that topic, but that was just a hypothetical, theoretical thing that I thought of that wasn't actually someone's question. So, I have no real basis to go off of in terms of experiences for that hypothetical. Anyways, you'll be honest, you're super into attachment theory right now because of your last heartbreak. I'm afraid I can't open up anymore. Jesus. I've been single for nearly a year. I mean, so yeah, attachment theories are it's a fascinating tool. It's obviously not the end all be all, because again, you understanding your innate attachment theories is important to understand where you want to be or where you want to go, and that takes a lot of conscious effort to change, because your body is always trying to your mind, your body, it's always trying to defend itself. So when it gets put into a hurtful situation, it wants to avoid that, wants to not repeat those events. And the problem is you'll associate what happened in one relationship with any other little thing and it'll close you off. But me personally, like there were multiple points in my life where I was single, and not even like, when I say single, I mean absolutely like no romantic interaction, fling or other, with people, with anybody for years. Before I met my current girlfriend and the one before her, I was single for 4 years. There was actually, in between that time, there was like one month fling test of a relationship that didn't pan out. But outside of that 1 month break from it, from the relationship celibacy, it was 4 years. I think that was from 28 years old to 32, give or take, or maybe whatever it was. 27 to 31, somewhere around there. I was single, and then from I think 21 to like 22 or 23 to like 24, 25, I was single. But that is due to my selectiveness. It's not that I'm necessarily picky in relationships. Like, again, I had that anxious attachment style that when I made the decision that that's my person, once I was like, that's it, I was all in, for better or worse. And obviously up to this point, in theory, it was always for the worse. Now, I'm someone who I look back and am grateful for those negative, instances in my life, because they allowed me to grow and adapt, and not be as anxious and be more selective. So I wasn't, I guess, shallow in the regards of the looks ever, but I was a lot more selective now of who I gave my heart to. Basically, it was naivety. I had this ideology of love based off of movies, TV shows, Disney. Fall in love with that person, you do anything for them. It could be a week, because that's what a movie would be. Oh, I just met this person, and then the next day, they're the love of my life, and that's who I'm to be with forever, and I'm gonna do everything for that person. And then they're reciprocal to that. At first they're not. They're like, oh, I don't know, you're weird. And then they're like, I kind of like you though. Like, so I kind of thought to myself, like, yeah, when you've made that decision, you're investing your time into the person that I'm all in. And for me, that wasn't correct because of my earlier attachment stuff. Because all in for me was anxious. Like, I don't stress really about much, if anything at all. The one thing that would get me emotional and stressed, anxious tight. Like, I mean, relationship woes would, like most people, it would keep me up at night. I would have a knot in my stomach. My appetite was crap. Luckily, I am very self-aware, and I have good self-monitoring. But I was very irritable, very irritable. Anything could set me off. Now it didn't, because again, I could feel myself like getting to that point where I'm like, oh damn, like I'm reacting really strongly internally. So I would, put on a face and be like, oh no, I'm good. But like relationship stuff would just give me such a high level of anxiety. And it wasn't healthy, because when you're in an anxious state, you lose a lot of your logic or reasoning, and your brain naturally likes to complete things. So if your partner's left an argument or a determination incomplete, if you're anxious about it, you are going to ruminate like a mofo. You are going to think to yourself all of the negative outcomes that this could be. Oh, well, they clearly don't like me, or this or this or this or this. So then that can lead to you testing which is always a bad. I mean, well, I would say 90% of the time, 95% of the time, testing is a bad thing. Well, let me test how much they love me. Let me test what they're willing to take in a relationship. So having ultimatums and like, well, if you don't answer this, we're done. Or just these rash things, or irrational things and thought processes. It's not healthy. It doesn't actually get you what you want. Like, you want that person acting like a crazy, anxious person. Probably doesn't make them want to be. Which again furthers your anxiety and depression. And then when you do those things and the relationship fails, you think to yourself, damn, I was crazy, I was this. Or you put it on them and be like, well, they don't know what they're missing out on. And then you deflect it all, so you don't do any growth yourself, because you're like, well, they were the problem. Like you justify why the relationship didn't go the way you wanted to, put it on them, opposed to actually analyzing, well, I didn't react in these proper ways. Not to absolve them, because there were plenty of times that I was in a relationship that was toxic, and the toxicity, whether or not it stemmed from me, I helped fuel it and create an environment that allowed it to. And understanding that alone was very productive. It helped me grow in relationships, because I was like, look, I set the expectation of what I am willing to take in a relationship, and it's human tendency to push boundaries, and it's human tendency to get complacent. So if I allow this toxicity, and I'm not saying be aggressive against it, being aggressive against it is still a form of toxicity, but understanding that I also am allowing the environment that I'm in and the relationship that I'm in. There's plenty of people that I know from just observational and personal experience with the person, and observational experience from seeing where they're at now in life. Me and X person, because of the environment that we both allowed, were terrible for each other, and they were toxic. And then objectively, I would say, like if someone's like, oh, how is dating so and so, I'm thinking about dating, I don't know, whatever. If I'm just taking my experience with that person, I'm like, oh my god, dude, they're crazy, like this and that, this, we fought all the time, they're blah 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 blah, yada yada yada, and I'm now ruining that potential for someone else. But the other thing is compatibility. That person might have, like the person I'm speaking to about the other person might have more self-awareness or securities than I do, and they would set an example or a foundation of like, look, I want to be with you, but I'm not going to tolerate these behaviors, and we can discuss this in a amicable manner. And if you need time to regulate, be at a good baseline to have this conversation, we can wait to that point. But where we're at right now isn't productive. Like, being able to control your own emotions and control yourself, to have that conversation with someone who is being emotional, difficult, because it's frustrating, and that frustration can bleed into you lashing out. So you have to have that level of discipline. So yeah, when it comes to get back to the kind of the original topic of like attachment theory, and saying you haven't being able to open up, you I also was very closed off, but it was, and the closed offness is a protection measure. So I'm not, blowing any minds by saying, you're just protecting yourself, but protecting yourself also isn't allowing yourself to live, not allowing yourself to have experience. So life will come at you. It'll hurt. Ooh. But you have to really make the determination of what kind of life do you want to live. Do you want to live a life that's sheltered and feared? There's nothing inherently wrong with that. That's the life you want to live. Then that comes with expectations. You're not going to get hurt by others, but you would potentially have a higher rate of depression, of GAD, generalized anxiety disorder, and if you value the solidarity and not getting that emotionally hurt potentially by someone else, more so than your fear of having depression or anxiety, then that's your choice. But if you do want to get back into a relationship and it's hard for you to break down that barrier, an easy cop-out is to say, well, then you're just not ready yet. You have more internal things that you have to work out and figure out until you are secure enough to know that you are capable of creating the environment in which you want to thrive in. And what, again, for me personally, that would look like is old me in a relationship would see a problem or would have a problem brought out to me. I wouldn't recognize the gaslighting. I wouldn't recognize the narcissistic personality because I had no true understanding of those things. But I would allow those strategies to affect me in a way that put me on the level that they were at, which devalued and lowered my security to make me more insecure and to make me potentially more volatile as well. And I use these terms, but I'm not speaking of physical aggression or anything. Hopefully that goes without saying, but not being in control of my own emotions because I allow the emotions of others and the irrationality of another person affect me, which in turn allowed the environment for that to feed. I don't mean this in any I'm well aware of ambiguity, androgyny. In today's society, gender roles in terms of male female are crossing. While I still understand societally we place the terms of this is masculine, this is feminine, but being a female with masculine tendencies, biological female with masculine tendencies, doesn't make you a man. It's just a person. Masculine tendencies are more of a descriptor of certain personality traits or passions. That's not a descriptor of I'm a man or woman. That's just what we've labeled things. So I don't mean this as maybe it is the masculine thing to do. I don't mean this as this is the man thing to do necessarily, but I should have set the example for what, at least for myself, of what I was willing to take and how our communication was going to be in the relationship. And I also needed to have the security and the understanding of myself to know when to walk away. I grew up having this like undying loyalty, which there was no grounds or basis for me to have that. But since I was a man of my word, I was a person of my word. If I said I was going to do something, or if I said like this is the person I'm investing in, I was just like, all the bad that comes with that, I'm just going to take it because I can take it, and because I said I would. Then when I got older, I'm like, since I know the type of personality I am, that if I say I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it. I refrain from saying things I don't fully, because again, what happens is I'll say something because I know it's the right thing to say in that moment, but that's not a true reflection of how I feel overall. But I know it's the right thing to say in that moment. It'll make them feel better, or it'll alleviate me from having an argument. So I say that thing. But now that I've said it, I've spoken it, now I had this drive, this loyalty to be like, well, now I gotta act on that. Now, because I said it, I didn't believe it, but now I have to at least act like I believe it. And it wasn't healthy for me or, you know, the other relationship person. So, you know, if you're still closed off, you know, it takes time and practice, and in some instances application, and honestly, to some extent, most instances, it takes application, you know, of going into a relationship, and thinking to yourself, I am going to be a stronger version of myself. These don't necessarily give yourself absolutes, except like, I absolutely won't tolerate someone, you know, a significant other beating me. Like, there's certain absolutes, yeah, but don't necessarily just have these like strong absolutes of like, well, I'm not going to take this, I'm not going to take this, I'm not going to take this. There should be a spectrum of like, I understand people will sometimes act out of character, so I will give some variable leeway of this behavior, but I'm not going to let that be a habit of the relationship, and I'm not going to let that be a standard of the relationship. Because when you set those hard boundaries, you're theoretically still walling yourself, but you're indenting the wall inward closer to you, but it's still there. Because now you have these absolutes that if this person doesn't fit, which your significant other, or like who you potentially want as your significant other, isn't going to fit this mold 100% of the time. So when you have these absolutes, you're not allowing for mistakes. You're not allowing for growth or moments to bond, right? Like, if I said to my girlfriend, like, this will not be tolerated. First of all, there's a personality trait in a lot of people that if you tell someone this is not going to be tolerated, they might not intentionally do that thing because they don't want to not have a successful relationship, but there's a rebellious tendency in a lot of people to be like, you're telling me what? Like, even if it's not a direct, like, you're not going to do this, like, of course, if you say you're not going to do this, first of all, that's a controlling thing that needs to be broken down in a different way. But secondly, now you're telling someone else how to behave. Like, that's in itself gonna give resistance. But even if it's not a direct, you're not gonna do this, if it's an indirect, I'm not gonna tolerate this, same thing, different wording, but at least it's more like, you can be whatever you want to be, I'm just not gonna deal with it. So it has a different level of like boundary, but someone could still perceive that as like a challenge, you know. So you do have to walk that line of setting those boundaries, but allowing for human error, you know. Because what's going to happen is if you have that avoidant, detached, you know, attachment, and someone even infringes on like just a hammer on that wall, even if you thought to yourself, well, I opened up my walls to set different boundaries, but if they're so set, as soon as someone just scratches the surface of that, that detachment mindset will instantly be like, oh no, this is not the person. Which might be true. Who knows? But you're not allowing for growth. You're not allowing for personal growth, and you're not allowing, not that it's your responsibility, unless it's, you know, still not your responsibility, but unless it's someone you truly care about, but their growth as well. Like, if, which is an unfortunate thing in most relationships, right? Like, if a lot of people don't get that full-on closure of a relationship of like, where did we go wrong objectively, like having someone who was on the other side of you that is mature enough to have that conversation, as well as you yourself to not take judgment on what is said, but like, where did we go wrong, so I know what to build off of. We don't get that criticism in a healthy, mature way. So it leaves you, the person, questioning like, well, you know, like you don't, sometimes you just don't even question like, no, my communication skills are perfect. It's like, no, there's a difference between expressing how you feel and articulating how you feel. Like, I can express that like, you're making me angry, F you, whatever, aggression. I'm expressing myself. I'm communicating with you. And it's like, that's, no. Like, it's better than bottling it in to certain extents. Like, you're at least expressing it so the other person's not left questioning. But you're not giving anything to build off of. You're not giving anything to... my brain just died, but you're not giving someone anything to be productive. So if like I'm frustrated, yeah, I might be like, I mean, I'm a little frustrated because this, that, and the other. And when you express yourself, the best way to express yourself is just expressing yourself. Don't tell someone else what they did or what they were thinking. Like, you did this, but I know you were thinking this. It's like, no, man, like, I'm a guy. Sometimes I'm gonna say, well, you know, gender, whatever, but like, me personally, I could be saying I love you, but my mind could be thinking about this fart I did earlier and how, I don't know, stinky it was. And I'm like, yeah, I love you. My face looks like this, and maybe my delivery is shit. Excuse my language. But that doesn't make it not true. I still love you. My brain was just somewhere else when I said it. Like, so, yeah, from, you know, your perspective, you might be like, oh, yeah, you said I love you, but it was a throwaway. Like, you didn't mean it. You didn't this. Like, you actually hate me. Like, don't do that. But expressing like, hey, you know, the way I perceive, like, you said I love you, but you're making a really weird face, and the delivery just didn't seem genuine, and I might have taken that wrong, but it upset me in that moment. And now you're giving someone the availability to defend or explain what was going on. It's not an attack. I'm not like, you made me feel like this, and you're a piece of shit. It's like, this is how I feel. This is why I feel that way. And Now I'm going to allow the other person to explain what their true intention was, and then I can reassess. But again, just super tangent off of the base story of like, you know, being closed off, opening boundaries, opening doors. You know, you just can't be. Well, it's again, you can be whatever. It's potentially more. I want to say hazardous, but it's not hazardous. Impenetrable. I don't know. To have these set boundaries with no give, on top of having a detached attachment style, an avoidant attachment style, because again, as soon as someone scratches that surface, you will shut off because you've had this set boundary. And the funny thing about boundaries is, to me, it's kind of like, you know, my type, right? When people are like, oh, what's your type? Like, I could be like, oh yeah, I like a girl who's blonde, blue eyes, big boobs, and a nice butt. And it's like, my girlfriend's got brown eyes. Because, you know, I'm not going to speak about the rest of her assets, but to some extent, it's not what I thought my type was. And to be honest, I don't think I ever dated what I thought my type was. So, so having these phony, like, absolutes, it's a defense mechanism. So you need to understand what you're defending yourself from. The easy answer is, well, pain, hurt. Okay. Be blunt, life's going to hurt you. Relationships are going to hurt you, even successful ones. So it's having boundaries that are malleable but in place. It's not a concrete wall, maybe it's a rubber wall. And it's not 20 inches thick. It's just a nice, solid rubber wall that has some bend to it. You know? Where the habit wouldn't push it all the way through, but maybe one little hit to it. And you could be like, yeah, I didn't like that. Now let's have a conversation. And I can set my expectation and communicate that articulately. Like, look, this is... I understand you were in an emotional space. I am not going to be talked to in that way. And I want, like, you... It's nice to have reassurance after that. Like, I want this relationship to work. I want blah, blah, blah. Like, having that reassurance so the other person doesn't feel like it's just a straight attack. Like, communication can be a difficult web. You know, balancing, like, saying how you feel, articulating that and setting it, but also showing the compassion and empathy and be like, I understand where you came from, or where, you know, whatever, but there's a better way to communicate that to me. And you have to be able to express how you want to be communicated to, and understanding of how another person wants to be communicated. So I don't know, that would be kind of what I would how I personally would respond to if I was in a relationship, it didn't end in the way that I had hoped, it hurt a lot, and now I put up these walls. I would go about it in that way, in the way of trying to figure out what it is that I'm putting these walls up for, and understanding or really asking myself the value of things. Like, do I value having a partner? Do I value my independence more, which can lead to depression? So can a relationship. Not to say that that's a cure for depression, but you're essentially giving yourself to solitude. Relationship, you can have friends that, you know, meet different needs, but romantically, you're like, nope, I don't need it. And that's fine. Have your walls, whatever, like, because that's your decision you're making. But if you're like Like, no, I value a partner. I want that relationship. Then you need to do some digging. Not just understand why the walls are up, because the walls are up because you got hurt. There's more nuance to it, but you got hurt. So your body, your mind, your heart, like, nope, shutting that down. We ain't messing with that. So you need to not just understand why the walls got up, but what it took to get to that point that the walls came up, and understanding where the breaking points are. Like, okay, I was talked down to in a condescending way regularly, and my expression of my disagreements with that wasn't articulated in a way that caused change, or my actions were opposite of what I expressed, regardless of how I feel. So again, there were times where I was in a relationship. I was like, I'm not going to tolerate this. It happens again. I have the same conversation. I'm not going to tolerate it. And it happens again. I'm like, look, I'm not going to tolerate this. Like, no, I'm tolerating it. The fact that it's happened 3 times, I've tolerated it. Like, your words and your actions have to be one. If you say you're not going to tolerate it and it happens again, you need to decide if the relationship is worth it to you. Then you can give ways for it to be met. But you have to put your foot down to show that you know what you're worth, you know your value, and you're setting the environment for what the relationship is and what it means. If that works for the other person, cool. Then you work on molding a relationship together, but you give them the out. Like, look, I told you last time I'm not tolerating this. It happened again. I'm going to remove myself from this situation and everything that's going on. I want this relationship to work out, but not if this is what's going to happen. So you can do whatever personal stuff you want to do, figure out if you want this relationship to work too, but just know that this is my standard. I'm not accepting anything different. And then, you can add more to that or whatever, but you're giving them something that they can work towards to an extent. You're sticking up for yourself. You're building your self-confidence. Because the first time you do it is the scariest. And it hurts you as well. When you're coming from either anxious or whatever attachment style, it hurts you as well. Because you want the relationship to work. And if it ends on those terms, then you might be like, well, damn, maybe they could have changed, or maybe this, or like, I really wanted that to work. And so it hurts you too. And there's the fear that comes with that hurt, but you have to understand, or you have to be willing to do that for you to grow and to be more confident in expressing, this is what I'm willing to take. You can do with that with what you want. I'm not telling you how to be. I'm not telling you who to be. I'm just saying, this is what I am wanting. I'm flexible in these areas. That's that. Like, I want this to work. But if you can't give me the things that I need, and you can, and a respectable thing to do would maybe ask, like, are there things that I'm doing that are causing you to have this behavior that I don't agree with? Like, am I triggering you in a way that makes you trigger me? If so, tell me about it, so I can also decide if my behaviors are something I want to change for this relationship. So you have to set those boundaries. If you can't get me to diamond, then I'm afraid we have to part ways. How you doing? Lana? So yeah, that's kind of what I would, you know, do or think about in that situation, Burnaby. I'm good. I'm good. Surprisingly, we made it to 2 hours of me just ranting away. So I'll probably be trying to close this up relatively soon. Like the 2 hour frame was a guideline, not a set rule. So do you have any thoughts, concerns, questions, Lana? We've kind of just been talking about random things, relationships, attachment styles, physiological health in relation to neurochemicals and how that interacts with mood regulation, and you know, simple things. But yeah, I mean, life is definitely a balance, you know, and trying to find that balance in all things: physical health, mental health, gut health, habits, actions. I don't know. Health anxiety for a bit, as in like body dysmorphia, or like you, like in what way are you I guess anxious about your body? Like you want it, obviously that means you want it to be something, or you think you want it to be something different than what it is at that moment. But is it, yeah, I guess we would have to, you know, figure out like where it stems from. You know, typical stuff, sips tea. Typical, you know, everyday things. Like, I personally probably have a mine's not an anxiety. Mine's more of like a defeatist attitude. But I don't know if you remember, I was having issues with your throat. Had an ultrasound done, and they said you had a mass, so that sucked. But when I had an ultrasound, nothing was there, so that's cool. Now I think I'm dying. That kind of health, so not like fitness, but like you, when kind of like not necessarily hypochondria, but you know, something happens, and you're like, oh shit, I'm dying. Get a CT scan. Okay. Well, glad to know that the mass was gone. That's good. But yeah, I mean, that it's kind of like one of those rational but irrational fears, right? Like, it's a fear that stems from experience, but like it's probably the fear of the repercussion of whatever health related issue you've concocted. So if you see discoloration on your arm, your immediate thought is like, oh shit, that might be melanoma, that might be cancer. And then that leads to the fear of what that means. And then that fear is anxiety, blah, blah, blah. It's just this perpetual thing. I can't say that I'm equipped to really help in that area outside of typical statements. But yeah, exactly. Now you feel something wrong. I mean, I'm like, oh god, I'm dying. Then you get depressed. Yeah. It, you know, for, you know, another disclaimer, since I am not yet a professional or licensed therapist, psychologist, for anybody out there listening, I can help with perspective and things like that, but I can't diagnose, I can't give protocols for treatments or anything. So if you really feel like there's something detrimenting your life, and free association and talk like this and helping, go seek the professional help. But I digress. Yeah, I don't know. Like me, if I think about myself in that situation, I don't know, I would ask myself, like, what is my fear actually of? Like, it's a normal fear, but like, am I afraid of dying? And am I really drawing that association of like, whatever this ailment is, death follows, and I'm afraid of death, which natural thing to be afraid of. But and then if that's the case, like, what brought that quick, drastic thought process on? Have I experienced something or observed a drastic change in someone else, or death of someone else, that kind of shattered this youth that I have, right? This like, well, I'm not dying anytime soon. And then you experience death, like, I could die tomorrow. Which, yeah, anybody, true for anybody. So it's like, did I witness something traumatic or experience something traumatic? And if no to those, then I have to ask myself, do I have a very internalized, ruminating, like, thought process of like, am I of the mindset that if I stub my toe right now, is my initial reaction, of course, like, yeah, of course I stub my toe, what's next? Gonna spill my coffee? Or do you have no thought, like, ouch, no, damn, my toe, and then you move on? Or, you might stub your toe and laugh to yourself, like, oh man, I'm an idiot. All right, I'll learn from that. Or like, oh, who moved that wall there? Like, it depends on how you react to everyday things, to an extent, or how I would react to everyday things, and that's a good. I don't know, I would say that's a decent gauge of where I'm at mentally. If I'm in a negative state and it's persisting, and I know that because any negative thing that happens, I believe that to be in that category of like, of course this happens to me. It's life, I guess. That's my life. Am I in that state of mind? So if it's not trauma related, is it just that's where I'm at mentally? And then I gotta figure out the things beyond that of like, why am I in this mental state? Because I'm depressed, because I'm lonely, because I'm, whatever. Because that all is going to bleed into my reactions to life things. And I might isolate it, like hypochondriac type things of like, oh shit, I coughed, I'm dying. There's something right here. It's killing me. I just don't know. Like, what is making me go from that to that? And it's usually, I would argue, possibly ignorantly so. I'm not fully educated yet in this. That it has to do with your mental state overall, and you might be just fixating the majority of that negative state emotion because maybe you're expressionately like seemingly regulated through everything else, but that's where that negative emotion persists because of your overall mental state. Or again, there's a trauma. There's something that you witnessed of like beautiful life, instant death, or beautiful life, quick decline to death, and that is more trauma related. I'm not qualified to really speak on that, but the generals would be like understanding that trauma, figuring out where it comes from. For the most part, that should be an easy question. If it does stem from trauma, you should know where it comes from. Well, not should. Most people typically know unless they compartmentalize it Most people typically know where that trauma comes from when they truly think about it. And then there's protocols, things to do, exercises, therapy to kind of fixate on, okay, this is a potential trauma or problem that I'm having and leading into my life in this help. So it's with that understanding, which, I mean, this is all, like, a lot of it's just intellectual and internal growth, like you also, the thing I dislike the most about myself and about humans when it comes to self-image is most people's self-image is determined by comparison. And who you choose to compare yourself to usually isn't fair to yourself. And it can just lead to demoralizing yourself, which, I mean, negativity is a spiral. Spiral down, and it's a flat ramp. So getting to positivity requires a lot more work, but it's the same spiral in reverse. It's easier to go into a negative spiral than it is to push yourself up through a positive. And building those steps to go back up that positive route takes work, and it takes from the ground up. Because if I start building my steps in the middle of this ramp and I fell below that, not to say I can't walk up a smooth surface to get to those steps, it's gonna be a hell of a lot harder than if I start from the foundation of where I am now. Not a comparison to anybody else and anybody else's situation, because my situation is specifically, situations can be shared, but the entirety of your experiences is unique to you as a person. So while I don't know, trying to make this non-personal or like whatever, but if I break my foot, I don't know. Nah, this is a bad example. But I'm gonna say it anyways, but because maybe you can get the gist, or like whoever's listening. If I break my foot playing football, someone else breaks their foot playing football, but they are younger and have a better diet than I do, our situation is the same. But who we are as a person is what makes that healing process unique. I'm older, I've been through more stuff, I'm going to heal at a slower rate, and I cannot compare myself to someone who's healing at a faster rate than I do, because then it might impair my healing. I have to take, not instance per instance, because yes, they had the same situation I did. It could happen on the same day, the same field. I cannot compare myself to anybody else, even if the situation is similar, because I can utilize some of their experience in their healing. Like, oh shoot, yeah, they're eating more steak. I don't know, they're drinking more milk to heal their bones. Kind of inaccurate physiological thing, but get the point. Now, okay, I can implement that as well. I still can't expect the same results, but I can take their experience and also utilize that for myself. So it's not that you are so uniquely different that nobody else's experience can help you, but it's taking other people's experiences, other people's traumas that they're willing to express, and using what works for you as the individual and not comparing their growth or their healing to yours. So that was kind of a sidebar, another side note, tangent of like just a thought in my brain of like the world of comparisons is rough. This is really relaxing. You should have a podcast. Well, I am planning on, or not I am going to be posting these on YouTube, so I guess in theory this is like a podcast. I couldn't tell what made more sense. Like I have this open space so we can, view things or go to Google Scholar, and like if someone has a specific question, we can look at an article together, kind of go through it, or watch a YouTube video together. So I have this open space for that. But when it's not there, it's just a blank space. But I don't know. I don't think this would be more maybe podcasty. It's just me, hey. But like aesthetically, I'm not sure if people want to just look at this furry mug the whole time. So I left it open for like this little thing, and the chat box bar over here, and like all those other things. So, like I said in the beginning of this, on my Facebook, on whatever, like this is a growing and learning experience. I'm going to be trying to improve this regularly with the input of, you guys, with when I post this on YouTube, hi YouTube, whatever, improvements that are feasible. Like obviously I know there's certain ones like you're in your living room, there's a couch behind you, the aesthetic isn't as appealing as it could be. I can't change that right now. So in terms of like how it runs, topics of discussion, things like that, I would welcome critiques and criticism, as long as they're reasonable. And it doesn't necessarily mean I'm going to take everybody's critiques. I mean, this is, it's a shared experience, but I'm still the one that has to make the regulations of like what's allowed, what's not allowed, blah, blah, blah. It's still a reflection majorly on me. So I have to also think about what's feasible and viable for me, myself. But yeah, I guess I'm gonna does anybody have any thoughts on how this went? This will be closing thoughts to end the stream / YouTube vid. I'll be back on for like video gaming probably later tonight, but I am gonna wrap this up. So if there's any closing thoughts from anybody who contributed or anybody who just lurked, I have no idea. Maybe some people were just lurking and not talking. If there's any critique, any thoughts for next week of like opening up, talking about this, just overall like how you guys enjoyed this. I'm doing this so I can be exposed to more situations to help me get more acclimated and better at doing my job, my future job. So I'm doing this for me, but also doing this for its purpose, to try and help people cope with what's going on or have a better understanding, give just different perspective on things. Again, I'm not here to diagnose, I'm not here to give protocols, I'm not my capability, but if I can give perspective that maybe wasn't thought about prior, or trains of thought that can make people go, oh yeah, that makes sense, and just help people air whatever grievance they have. Free association is just a very powerful tool. Sometimes a psychologist or therapist's job isn't to prescribe anything, it's just to allow somebody to freely associate their thoughts and express things that are embedded in them that maybe they've thought about internally but haven't expressed. And there is a huge difference in coping and growing from internalizing something and expressing something. So yeah, it was enjoyable. I appreciate that, Lana. Appreciate that. And what about the cheesy stress and anxiety, non-copyright music in the background? Is that too much? This, I'm asking you guys, and I'm asking whoever watches on YouTube, is that too much? And I'm trying to set a relaxing, if anything, you watch and fall asleep. Whatever helps you. Perfect. I feel like it was relaxing. All right, good. So I'm hitting the points that I want to hit. And yeah, I mean, hopefully, whoever's listening could take something of value, anything, even if it's one point, and they thought the rest of what I was saying is nonsense. There's always forget the specific name of the fallacy, but there's a fallacy that people shut off all of the proceeding information if the first, second, or third bit of information is disagreeable or inaccurate. And it's a fallacy because that doesn't devalue the accuracy of everything else. If I purposely said something inaccurate in the first 5 minutes of this, but then let's say I gave the perfect talk the rest of the 2 hours, there's a natural fallacy people tend to follow, that they would just shut off entirely, or like not even listen, or B would just be listening to scrutinize, or be like, yeah, I can't believe anything this person says because they said one potentially untrue or factually untrue thing. So hopefully, whoever's listening could get at least one nugget of something that helped them, or it sparked something for them to ask next week. But yeah, I guess I'm going to go ahead and end it here. We did talk about a lot of points. It was nothing too specific, kind of. I mean, sometimes it's pretty specific, but yeah, hopefully we'll be able to do, not hopefully, I need to change terminology. We will be back next week for another 2-hour session. Time frame as of now will still be Thursday 1 to 3 p.m. Pacific time. So for all my Central Texas peeps, that's most people on my Facebook that I posted to. 3 to 5 Central, 4 to 6 Eastern. Break it down for you. And when I get more feedback as to time frames that work better for people, if they want to attend live, and there's a more generalized consensus of like, do 3 to 5 Pacific time, because that's the rest of the country is off work, getting settled in, whatever. And I'm all ears, I'm all open. This is just the time I randomly decided, so it has no significance. But we'll be back Thursday, Therapeutic Thursday, next week, 1 p.m. to 3-ish p.m. I mean, we went over 20 minutes. There's no set time. And hopefully I'll be able to reach out to more of you guys. We'll be able to have more further discussion, discourse. If there's things that you can contribute, I'm willing to learn as well. I'm not the expert. I love being educated. This is all just from information that I know, or I feel I know. I mean, I did pretty well in school, but sometimes information, there's a gap, and you fill in the gap inaccurately. So, yeah, appreciate everybody watching. Thank you for the topics we did discuss. Thank you deeply. I will see you next Thursday. I'll have a better intro and outro. Maybe not by next week, but sooner or later. We'll go with that. Alright, thank you guys for watching. Have a great day.